Hey, everyone. Welcome to a very special quality control episode. I'm Grant Cohn. That's Karan Sharma. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you should know who Karan is. Karan is a Cohn Phone Hall of Famer. His jersey's in the rafters. His number's been retired. There's only one Karan. And as you know, if you've been watching this channel, Cohn Phone Hall of Famers often graduate and become Cohn Zone regulars, or at the very least, they get a show with your boy. So we'll see how Karan does today. But Karan hit me up a couple of days ago being like, I got a show if you want to do a show. And that's a guy talking my language. So Karan, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm batting 1,000, man. Let's talk 49ers. You seem to be kind of optimistic at a time when people are doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom.
Losing streak and 2 weeks to stew on it. So let's talk about Brock Purdy. Do you think Brock Purdy's the problem?
Absolutely not. Brock Purdy's not the problem. And two things I do want to do. I want to do the boring statistical aspect of it, where he is 9th in passing yards. I want someone to tell me the last time a 49er quarterback was in the top 10 in passing yards midway through the season. I can't remember last time. It was not Jimmy Garoppolo. Tell me a last time that a 49er quarterback was second or third in QBR. Tell me a time a quarterback was either first or second in rating, right? And, one thing I want to keep before we go on is the turnovers. And we can get to that in a little bit, because I know that's been a point of contention with 49er fans, and some people will ignore it. But I think this is a transition of what might be to come with this offense with Brock Purdy. I think you're going to have to live with the playmaking, and that also comes with higher risk turnovers. I think it's just part of the game. I don't think it's a regression thing. I don't think it's something that needs to be fixed. I think really? It's a situational thing. I think it's a situational thing, honestly. I think it's something that can be correct. To say that he has a turnover problem means that he is doing it throughout the game. To me, they're happening at the end of the game.
The worst possible moment.
But situationally,
the pressure moment.
Correct. And as a young quarterback, I've seen a lot of statistics that says that he hasn't played a lot from behind, right? And I did the snap count and I looked at it. It's the equivalent of almost 4 drives.
Okay.
Give or take. So we're basing his whole entire trajectory.
So life has been good on him. Life has been real good for him, essentially. So he's gone 10, 13 starts, and he's never really had to play from behind. And now he does, because a couple people are hurt and the defense is down a little bit, and we're learning things.
And I think Kyle's learning things too. I think that, in my mind, Kyle is seeing what he can get away with Purdy, and he can see what he can get away with Purdy. And I think, honestly, what Purdy needed to do, I'll give you a good example. That second interception, the back, to me, that was the game's kind of over thing when he threw that interception. To me, he had Christian McCaffrey for a 7-yard gain. Easy. Just throw it. 7 yards, right? And it would have been 2nd and 3 or whatever it was. I think that when Purdy gets more experience, he's got to learn that he's got to take what the defense is giving him in the fourth quarter. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be consistent, and he can't turn the ball over. And that is something that either he's going to grow from, or Kyle's going to break it into him. I'm an optimistic fan, right? And so to me, if he was throwing those in the first, second, third quarter and the fourth quarter, I would have been more concerned, but I think he's situationally learning. And one thing I've seen from Brock that I saw last year was that rollout to the left, right? When he got in trouble, he's climbing the pocket a little bit more. So optimism that I see is that he learns from his mistakes. Now, unfortunately, he is learning as they're losing games and going along, which is not ideal, but he's learning.
Can I say why I think he's the problem?
Yes.
Okay. So I think when they're rolling, he's part of the solution. But they have a very specific way that they roll. They get the lead early. They go up 7, 10, 14. And then their defense really takes over. and forces a turnover, to puts the other team in a bad spot. And all of a sudden on offense, you can run the ball. You got play action. You got a lead. Like it's not easy, but it's like as easy as it gets to play quarterback. And then eventually, like sometimes they can put the game away before the fourth quarter even starts. So he's great under those circumstances when everything's going great and the script works but like that's not football. You can't do that every week. And now we've seen a couple injuries, and now he's in some games. He's losing late. He doesn't get the lead right away. And maybe it's the offense that's not built for this, but like he seems like he's choking. Maybe that's a little unfair to say so early in his career, but the last few weeks, all those turnovers in the fourth quarter, I mean, if it were Jimmy Garoppolo, we'd say he choked. But for Brock, we give him grace because he's 23 years old and he's young. I think he choked. And I think what's scary is I'm looking at his pro football focus grades for his career. First three quarters, 84, ninth best among quarterbacks. And then fourth quarter OT, 55, that's 30th. Like, I don't know. Maybe this is all small sample size stuff, but it's alarming.
So I would say that, to my defense to that would be that it is a small sample size. I would also push back and I would say that, to me, I'm an optimistic guy. I think the 49ers will be fine. The two areas that I have concern is that Kyle's lack of adapting when his players go down, certain players, right? And I think Debo is one of them. I think what I have seen, and I think the blueprint is out on the 49ers, is that the first two downs, you have 5 linemen on the box, you prevent any sort of run up the middle, and then they are putting 8 people around on coverage on third down and daring him to throw. And I think that, to beat it, and I saw it done once at the Cincinnati game, was like a play action boot right away from those 5 linemen, first down, not throwing and putting Christian McCaffrey out in a receiver. And I think part of it, Christian might not be 100%, so he may not want him to play receiver. But to me, these are simple fixes that Kyle's not even doing during the game. He's just ramming it right in the middle, the first few downs, and he's telling Brock, go make a play, which he's doing more often than not. But that stuff catches up to you in the fourth quarter, Grant. And I think you can't scheme certain things. And I think part of the problem for the 49ers is that they can't scheme the two areas that are the most important, is that their offensive line is not very good at blocking anymore, run blocking. And statistically, they're 20th for pass blocking and pass protection. I think they're 20th in pass protection. They're 17th. So they're the bottom tier in both run and pass blocking, both of them. They're both. And the other flip side is that coverage.
Okay. I want to come back to Brock real quick before we move on to the next topic. The way I look at it is like, I understand people highlighting the good things he's doing, and he has done a lot of good things, but I feel like this is it's a harsh world. It's a harsh reality. And he plays quarterback in the NFL. He's lost 3 games in a row, and he's committed 6 turnovers in these games. If this streak continues, he's going to get benched. And I'm not saying it will, but if it's 4 losses and 8 turnovers, if it's 5 losses in a row and 10 turnovers, like eventually you pull the plug. And that's why I feel like it's a very serious point in young Brock Purdy's career. I don't necessarily expect him to beat Jacksonville. Doesn't mean he'll play poorly, but doesn't mean he won't, especially given what he's been doing the last few weeks. So whether or not he's the problem, he has a problem. He needs to turn this around right now, or else.
My rebuttal,
you know what I mean?
Where are those quote unquote Jimmy gimmies for Brock? Why does Brock have to throw every single pass, in triple coverage, make a dime throw? Where are those quick? Where's the Jimmy offense? Where is it?
And if you want Brock to do better in the fourth quarter, like practice a 2-minute drill, right? Kyle, we're gonna get to him in a minute. Big Tip 3 says, according to Karan, we have to go through these growing pains with Brock. We traded the house for a project. Was he really that bad?
Oh, we're talking about Trey.
Talking about Trey.
So I think they made a decision, and they decided that these growing pains was something that Brock could do on the fly and Trey could not.
Fine. I think the mistake they made was running Trey off for Darnold. If Darnold ever has to play and he's not what they say he is,
Darnold's not it. Can I ask you
There's
something?
no reason to do that. They just thought Trey was going to be a distraction. First of all, he's not a distraction. He doesn't call attention to himself. You made him a distraction. That was silly.
I've heard a peep out of him in Dallas. Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nothing.
Yeah, he's a team guy. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Brendan,
I agree.
go ahead. You have something to say? Go ahead.
I would just say that the Trey Lance piece, as a football fan, my biggest gripe was never that they drafted Trey Lance. It's how they got Trey Lance. Had they stuck with where they were in the draft,
right,
and not traded up for all that stuff, I think they did Trey Lance a disservice, mostly.
Well, in retrospect, they were going to do any player they took at that pick a disservice. There's no one who was worth that pick after all they gave up for it.
No.
You can't do that to a young man, and they did it. Brendan Gonzalez's defense needs to step up. Brock is still pretty much a rookie. Look at the Titans game last night. They lost because their rookie quarterback threw an interception that Brock would throw. Okay. I mean, the defense is supposed to be leading the team. Gojira Von Jink says Brock can both choke and need the chance to grow. A young quarterback has to be given a chance, unlike Jimmy, who is way past the growing stage. Fair enough. Let's talk about the next step for Brock Purdy. This is a time for introspection and growth. It's the bye week, and he's going to need to change something, do something a little differently to beat Jacksonville, and keep his job. So what is it?
Check down to Christian McCaffrey or check down to the running back. Just make the simple play. I think where Brock is getting, and it's the one gripe I do have is that he'll make plays. We have someone who can anticipate the ball, but I think the defenses now are getting smart and they're baiting them into throws, much like we saw with Drew Brees, much like we saw with
Jimmy.
Here's the thing, I think Jimmy could never move people like Brock does with his eyes. Never. I've never seen Jimmy do that. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Jimmy was Kyle say throw here, and he would throw here. And really, when Kyle had a bad game plan, Jimmy wasn't bailing him out.
Did you say that to his face in Detroit?
No, I did not. I was with my daughter, who was very
yeah. Okay, keep going.
He was smitten with the jawline. So I think the reason why Kyle is optimistic with Brock is that Brock is bailing Kyle out of some of his bad plays.
Mm-hmm.
He is because Kyle has, and I think everyone will agree, Kyle's not called a good game plan because he has seen the teams adjust to what he does now. And I think it was the Browns game where I saw 5 people there at the line of scrimmage and press man coverage. And there's 2 things that our receivers outside of Brandon Ayuk is that they can't beat man coverage. They're not good route runners. I hate to say it. I love Debo. I love Kittle, but they're not good route runners. And
even Juwan Jennings isn't getting open.
And Juwan's the best. What did that tell you when Juwan Jennings is the second best route runner on your team? Right. Yeah. And to me, they need to put Christian McCaffrey out there. And I don't know if it's a rib injury as a slot receiver, but they need to combat that 5 line. They need to get 5 of those players out and isolate McCaffrey.
We're going to talk about reinforcements later, but I think Deebo Samuel is so critical for this particular slump the Niners are in. I think everything fell apart when he left. And I know they've won games without him in the past, but I mean, McCaffrey's kind of banged up. Trent Williams is out. They need Deebo. He makes everything. He's like a cheat code for a quarterback. You can just throw it behind the line of scrimmage to Deebo. He could break 8 tackles. They need that Deebo Samuel right now. And if they can get him and Christian McCaffrey on the field together, they might be able to start scoring points again. I think Debo's really critical right now.
Can I also say one thing? The next step for Brock Purdy is that when we saw in training camp was a lack of being able to throw the deep ball. And percentage-wise, he's almost at a 60% rate. He leads the league in 20-yard throws, percentage-wise.
Jimmy was like that 2019.
Exactly. They're very similar.
But you don't do it very much, but when you do, it's wide open. Yeah.
Correct. And to me, I think they need to get back to what they do is those very short intermediate throws. Maybe with offensive line reinforcements coming back, they'll be fine. But to me, they've gotten away from what they do a little bit. And I think it's Kyle kind of seeing what works and what doesn't.
Or maybe to me, maybe it's a little bit of Brock trying to do too much in the fourth quarter, down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like these turnovers are happening when he throws down the field in the fourth quarter, down 5, down 10, down 7. You know, it's like, Brock, maybe you needed to learn. Like the first 10 games of his career, all he did was do his job and win by 20. No, now the last 3 games, it's like, okay, Brock, you need to step it up. You're down, lead the comeback. And he's like, all right, here I go. It's like the batter, you know what I mean? All right, we're down 3, bases loaded. Here I go. I'm gonna be the hero. And then you just strike out on 3 straight.
Which he did in college, right? And I thought that with Kyle being his coach,
I did that when I was 14 in All-Stars.
Well, he doesn't have a lack of playmakers. I think the other issue is that he does try too hard. I think he just should do what the defense gives it to him.
And you know what concerns me? 1 turnover against the Browns, 2 turnovers against the Vikings, 3 turnovers against the Bengals. Could have been 5. Like, is he spiraling? Is he snowballing? What's going on? How is he going to respond to adversity? It was all going so well. He was 10-0. He was an MVP candidate. Now 1 loss turns into 3. 1 turnover turns into 6. And it's like, oh yeah, you lost a lot of games in college. You turned the ball over a lot of times in college. Like, is this something with you? Does 1 problem turn into 4? What's up with that? I want to know. Or is he the guy who's like, because the thing with Joe, who people were trying to compare Brock to, is Joe could have a terrible first 3 quarters. He could go out. He threw 3 picks in that game against the Cowboys in 1981, the NFC Championship game. He threw 3 picks in that. He could be objectively awful and still win the game. How many guys can do that? Not that many. I don't know if Brock can do that.
Listen, I will just say, in Brock's defense, he did everything he could at that Browns game. I was there, and I don't know why, for whatever reason, that Kyle
he was so bad earlier in the game, though.
I understand, but he got the drive in, and the not running for 4 or 5 extra yards was mind-boggling. No, I couldn't understand why he wasn't doing it. The weather was crappy, right? So every yard as a kick mattered, and I think I give him a pass on the Browns game, and I give him a pass on the Bengals game. To me, I don't give him a pass as much in the Minnesota game, because I think those were his mistakes, mostly his mistakes. And
you give him a pass on the Bengals game?
Yeah. I give him a pass on the Bengals game because the Bengals destroyed that offensive line. Hold on. I won't even go into stats. I won't even do any of that stuff.
All right.
He passed the eye test.
I don't care.
He passed the eye test.
I don't care.
He did.
I don't care. You got to hold on to the ball, man. You got knocked, you got sacked, and you fumbled. Like, in moments like that, he looks too small. He looks physically incapable. Like,
I agree, but we're just going to ignore the other 3 quarters where he was the only reason why they're in the game. You think Jimmy could have made those plays and
I'm not ignoring. I'm weighing. I'm not ignoring. I'm weighing on a scale. And that's the thing about playing quarterback. Those turnovers outweigh a lot of good throws. They do.
And I would say that Kyle needs to do a better job of protecting his quarterback.
Sure. Both things can be true for sure. Matt McEwen says maybe Brock gets arm fatigue after 45 minutes. I don't know if he's being snarky or not, but I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I don't know. It's possible. I don't think it should be. Like, you throw more passes in practice than you do in a game, but.
Are you going to be at the game?
No, I'm not going to Jacksonville.
It would be interesting to see if someone is there with this week off, if he comes back and his arm's stronger. Be interesting to see. That would be
quite interesting, considering he was talking about that with Troy Aikman just a few weeks ago. All right. So we talked about the next step for Brock Purdy. Karan, what's the next step for Kyle Shanahan this season?
Kyle needs to adapt to 5-man in the box. Kyle needs to come to grips with himself and get rid of someone on that right side of the offensive line, and either put the person who was replacing Trent Williams.
Jalen Moore?
Yeah. Put him there, because he can't be any worse than those 2. Eye test, those guys are a liability. Other teams are putting their best pass rushers, who primarily play on that side. They're just moving over on that other side and dominating. Their other coaches are mercilessly going over on that side, stunting on that side, and they can't handle that anymore. And I think they need to just come with grips, is that they underestimated 2 aspects. They underestimated the value of their offensive line and how bad it was. And I think they've underestimated the value of their corners.
Yeah. That offensive line, man, the right side, I don't know what they were thinking with the Colton McKivitz, Spencer Burford combo.
And it's
Nothing
not
against
even
those two.
It's not even those two, but it's the combination of those two.
How do you line them up together and think this 5th round pick and this 4th round pick and this 5th round pick are going to be a good starting tandem? Like they're nice depth pieces. But that's all you aspire to have on the right. They can't run to the right. They can't pass block on the right side of the line. They're just sort of there. They're in the way.
They're in the way.
Briefly.
They're in the way. And they're 20th in pass block win rate. They're losing the majority of the time, and they're getting bailed out because Brock can actually move up. He's got a little bit of quick step, and he's getting that stuff done. I think the other thing that Kyle needs to do is that I think everyone forgets Kyle is watching the defense play. And I think Kyle gets wrapped up in how the defense isn't dominating anymore. And I think Kyle's being too aggressive on his play calls. I think Kyle needs to realize that he has a young quarterback. He's got to put that quarterback in a place to succeed. And I think he's trusting that the quarterback's going to deliver because he can do these off-script plays and the turnovers are happening. I think Kyle's looking at his defense and he's going to be like, oh, crap, we actually have to win the game now. I think that's part of it too, that he's down there looking at this. He sees what's happening. And I think part of the issue is that Kyle needs to come to grips is that his defense may not be as good as it was. Why? And he's got to figure out why. And I think a lot of other players, former players, one thing that stuck out to me, Grant, was that the 49ers are number one in pressure rate. I have that right up here. They're number one. They're winning the majority of the time. They're getting to the quarterback, right? They're either
but their corners are playing with such a large cushion. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But so it's not even
matter.
that. I think people take for granted how spacing as well as where you should be and how far you should be, the linebackers as well as the corners and playing that together, they're aligned so terribly that when they do get to the player, that player has a head of steam and he's making the missed tackles. I can't tell you how many times previously years they would catch a 5-yard ball, but I would see 5 red jerseys converge on that person. That's not happening anymore.
No.
And I think that's the thing that
yards after the catch, all that. Yeah.
I think that is something that I think Richard Sherman alluded to. I think other players have alluded to it, is that they truly are not they're not, combining their pass rush as well as their coverage together. And I think because Wilkes is a coverage guy, he may be getting a little too cute.
Also, remember that really the hallmark of D'Amico's defense, it wasn't anything schematic. What would people say about D'Amico's defense? Man, he gets all 11 guys to the ball every snap. This defense is relentless in their pursuit.
Yep.
That's not this defense anymore. This defense is sleepwalking. And it's like, it seemed like with D'Amico and Saleh, those two guys sort of infused emotion and passion and energy into their players. Right there in the sideline. That's what they were there to do. Like, it wasn't like, what am I going to call next? Man, it's going to be cover 3. Like, you know what you're going to do. You do some very simple stuff, but you're there to infuse passion because Kyle's lost in his playbook, thinking about the most clever play you could ever imagine. Wilkes isn't doing that, and I feel like this defense is missing it. This defense is really missing that element.
Wilkes is doing the same thing, but he's doing it up from the booth, and it's not working, right?
It's not working, man.
And I think defense is so much as you want to scheme it, as much as you want to be cute. It's emotion and it's effort. Defense is all effort.
Effort.
And you are right. I think outside of those two linebackers who are killing themselves, right? And basically by the fourth quarter.
Where's the effort?
Right. Outside
of
that.
Where's the effort? Is it from Travarius Ward?
So I think Travarius Ward is not, quote unquote, the problem. I think Wilkes doesn't know how to use him. I also think the biggest.
How do you use Travarius Ward? That's a good question. Because if you play him in zone coverage, he's going to just watch people catch the ball. And if you play him in man coverage, he's going to commit a penalty. So what do you do?
So I think Wilkes has him playing so off. It's almost 7-8 yards. And I think what D'Amico did was play, and Saleh did this too with Sherman, was that they had them play 5-6 yards off. It wasn't the amount that we're seeing now, because I think the problem is that they're in between. They got to commit to that zone and live with it. And I think they're doing this thing where they're kind of like shielding themselves, but it's compounding it. They got to trust their players. The only player I do not trust on that defense is Oliver. And the stats prove that, because everyone's batting 1,000 throwing to that guy. And as much as defense's effort, there's one, what is the age saying? You can't hide slowness, and speed kills. He is the slowest person on the field. He is so slow that offensive coordinators are literally scheming him to be one-on-one, and people are 4 or 5 yards open.
He's terrible. And he can't
he's a great
tackle
tackler, but to me, he's a glorified linebacker at this point.
He's not good.
He cannot.
All right, let's check out our sponsor, BetUS. Let's check out, just for fun, a prop bet. It's not even a prop bet, but the NFL Season Award, the odds for the 2023-2024 NFL Coach of the Year. At the bye week, you guys might think that Kyle Shanahan is about to turn it around, go on a second half run like he always does, and win the whole thing. Kyle Shanahan, right where you at, Kyle? Right here, plus 2,000. So if you want to bet on Kyle Shanahan, you want to place a wager, go to BetUS. Use the link in the description. Get 125% sign-up bonus your first deposit. You can get some good action with Kyle Shanahan right now. People that have better odds than him to win. Dan Campbell's the favorite. Robert Saleh, number 2. Mike Tomlin ahead of Kyle. No. Doug Peterson. Mike McDaniel. Okay, so this is interesting. Saleh's at plus 600, McDaniel's at plus 300, and D'Amico's at plus 1,000. Kyle Shanahan has worse odds than his 3 former underlings.
And look at the previous coach of the year in Brian Daboll, I believe. Look how bad. Look, if the NFL isn't a year-to-year league, he is. What is he?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
he's like the most likely to get fired, probably.
Correct, and he won it.
Josh McDaniels. He has the same odds as Josh McDaniels, who no longer is employed.
Correct.
Andy Reid's never going to win. He's never going to win, even though he's a great coach. Nick Sirianni also.
No.
Same odds as Kyle. It's like they're in that boat of guys who are regarded as good, but never going to get sort of the credit for it. I don't know.
Well, I think that's are they really good coaches, or are they really lucky that they've got all-star players? I mean, right.
Good question.
Same thing could be said about their quarterbacks.
It's a good question. If you want to wager, go to BetUS. Use the link in the description. Thank you very much for my sponsor, BetUS. Let's get a couple of these super chats and get back to the show. Matt McEwen says he was being serious about Brock's potential arm fatigue after 45 minutes. Double B Studio has been a member for 26 months. Wilkes in the booth matters, in my opinion. Yeah, they need a defense. Kyle always needs a defensive coordinator on the field because he ain't that guy. Big Tim 3 says Kenny Pickett is more clutch than Brock.
Okay, I saw Kenny.
I'll take Brock over Kenny Pickett. Thanks. I watched Kenny Pickett last night, and I watched Will Levis, and I was like, you know what? I'm pretty hard on Brock Purdy, but I'll take him over these two guys. Boxing fan at times 4 says, what if Niners don't lose? Game end 17-17 draw.
Okay.
What if? I love what if questions. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, man, what if? I love it. Silverback says Kittle told Taylor Lewin Brock is trash. No, he didn't. Did he? No, he didn't. All right. Give me your reasons for optimism. The Niners have lost 3 in a row, but they're still 5-3, and they don't have to play this weekend. Are you optimistic?
Oh, I'm very optimistic. I mean,
why?
If you've been a Niner fan for more than this year, look at the last 2 years. I mean, they've started much worse, right? Much worse. And I think they were 3-5 last year at one point, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And they are 5-3 this year. Right. And I think in my mind, when they were 5-0 and everyone was really happy, I had a level of anxiety.
I wasn't happy.
They were peaking too soon. Why? Well, I mean, it was more other than being boring, correct? And that too, right?
Yeah.
I think it's boring. Yes.
Yeah.
I think they needed this. I think they needed to figure out what was going to work defensively and what wasn't going to work defensively. I do think Chase Young is going to be great, but the statistics, it's a nice to have, right? And frankly, they need to solve what they're going to do at their nickel spot, because they're going to go against offenses that are coming up where the nickel receiver is their primary receiver that's coming up, right? So they got to figure that out fast, because that guy can't cover anybody. So they got to figure that out and hope they get reinforcements. So I do think there's.
Hold on, let me stick with that for a second. Reasons for optimism. I feel like this team they've needed to be honest with themselves for a long time. This team is the king of like lying to itself. Hey, we just lost the NFC Championship game, but it's not our fault. In fact, we were gonna win that game, but some fluky stuff happened. Like, that's them. And then they win 5 games or 3 games, and they're like, see, that proves that we were going to win the Super Bowl last year and that we are the best team, and let's give Kyle an extension and let's beat our chest after 5 games. It's like, nah, man, that's the whole reason why you don't win Super Bowls. This whole culture right here. If you could just look yourselves in the mirror, honestly, and really understand your strengths and weaknesses, you just might win the whole thing because you're so freaking talented.
The Cowboys,
you know what I'm saying?
The Cowboys did after they lost to the Niners, and Dak has played his best 3-game stretch since that, and that was probably one. And I think you're right. I think you need to say, hey, we can't do this anymore. We have to be honest with ourselves. You know, we can't say this, and that. I think they need to embrace that. I do.
Yeah. Like they talked about after beating Dallas that they've established a standard, and it's not about who you're playing or how much you win by. It's all about just playing up to a standard. You lost it. It's gone. Yeah. You have to reestablish that standard in every way. It's not just the final score. It's how you approach the whole week of preparation. And the way they approached the Cleveland Browns, the way they walked out that game, felt like a team that wasn't taking not only their opponent seriously, but their season seriously themselves.
I think that Browns game, again, it was very disappointing. And, you know, watching it
very disappointing.
I was about 4 or 5 rows away from the Browns bench, and you could tell that skirmish, you know, that lit a little bit extra on the Browns. So I think because
like real quick, it's not a young team. If this were 2019, you made this mistake, it's like, all right, man, like they're not really ready for it. This is a team that's been there over and over again. So you do it now, and it's like, okay, this is a character flaw. It's Trent Williams. He's 35. It's Debo. You've been here, man. Like, this is a character flaw. And if you guys don't, and that's why 1 loss turned into 3. Like this, you are free falling. You are finding rock bottom. And if you don't honestly look at yourselves in the bye week, in the mirror, you're going to lose to Jacksonville. You're going to lose to Jacksonville. So don't tell yourself that you needed this. Yeah. You have to tell yourself we are not as good as we thought we were. And we need to start from ground zero, start over.
Yes. Another reason for I agree. Another reason for optimism is that they are not going to go against teams coming off buys as much coming up. And I think part of the reason why they looked so exhausted was that they were coming off a short week, and they're going against a team that came off a bye, and they looked it, right? It was like a first round bye. That team looked like it needed rest. Now, ironically, Jacksonville's on the bye, so both teams will be fresh. So there is no advantage for them on this front, right? And so I think, but going forward, they'll have some advantages in that aspect. And I also think people, when the schedule came out, I think people underestimated what rest means to the 49ers and how lucky they were last year. I counted, they basically had 10 home games last year. They had 10, you know, that Rams game and that Arizona game that was in Mexico, those are 49er home games. And they didn't have to get out of the West Coast at all at the end of last year.
How many actual road games did they have last year? Every time they went on the road, the stadium was packed with Niner fans. The only road games I remember were Denver. They lost. Philly. They lost. They didn't have to go very far. Now, Jacksonville, that's probably going to be a home game, but you got to go real far to make it a home game. Because I don't think Jacksonville Jaguars fans exist, or if they do, I don't know if they go to the games, but it's a far game.
Yeah, yes. And they're coming right back, and they're playing Tampa, right? So, yeah. So, you know, to me, these 2 games against winnable opponents, and I say winnable with quotation marks, if they can start off, reason for optimism. Another reason why is they're getting their 2 All-Pros back, where Kyle is basically has a track record with either of them go down, the offense isn't as very good or as creative.
Yeah, let's talk about those reinforcements. So Trent Williams coming back, Debo Samuel coming back, maybe a week for Christian McCaffrey to get healthier. Aaron Banks is going to miss a little time, and that's a significant loss, but Randy Gregory's getting more acclimated to the system, and now Chase Young is here, and Washington didn't want him, but he's going to be playing with Nick Bosa, who signed off on him, and people think Nick Bosa is going to bring the best out of him. How much does this change the Niners' fortunes going forward, these reinforcements coming back?
I think it helps them immensely if they can get their coverage to match what they're doing. And I think it helps immensely that they've done this before. I think they just need to go back to the basics and remember what they used to do prior. And I think Wilkes needs to come on the sideline. And I think Wilkes is a pretty good teacher from what I can tell. And I think he would benefit from that as well. And I think at the end of the day, the overlying message should be keep it simple. It's not broke. Ironically, Grant, defenses are doing to the 49ers what the 49ers defense do to other teams, right? They tackle, they don't let them get yards after the catch, and frankly, they wait for them to make a mistake. And the 49ers have been doing that on offense. They've been giving the ball over, much like the defense was doing prior to this. I think keeping it simple, relying on your playmakers, they should be fine. And I think having Devo back will help Kyle do one thing to prevent those 5-man things, screens, right? I'm not really sure why no one else on the 49ers can run a screen other than Devo, but apparently that's the case because when he leaves, that whole outside screen game goes away. It's not there anymore.
No, it's gone. Devo's so important in this offense because he just makes it so easy when he's doing his thing. It feels like if he could come back and give him what he gave him 2 years ago. Remember, they were 2-4. Mm-hmm. They went to Chicago. They were losing at halftime.
Yes.
Like they were about to be 2-5. That was about to be the end. And all of a sudden he just went crazy. I hit like an 80-yard screen. He just took over the whole game, took over the whole season. He has the capability. Christian McCaffrey's already given his all. George Kittle's given his all. Brandon Ayuk given his all. Debo, if you could join the party, stay healthy, and sort of turn back the clock to 2 years ago, man, this team just might win the Super Bowl. I think so much depends on Debo.
And I would want to push back on anyone who ever says that Brandon Ayuk is better than Debo or a better, is gone up. Is that I have seen Debo can take over a game, and Brandon had opportunities to take over games with Debo gone, and he didn't.
That's true.
He didn't.
Debo can also disappear for like a season and a half.
This is true. You know
what I'm saying?
But the threat
at least Brandon Ayuk is consistent in his like good, not greatness. Like Debo can be great. Debo can also be like, what the hell happened to you?
It's extremes. I get it. Get it. But yes, I agree. But I also feel that some of the things that Brock can get away with happens because Debo's on the field. And now that he's not, he can't get away with it. One thing I will say for reason for optimism.
I was disappointed in Ayuk the last few weeks, man. He had some like catches, some drops.
I got that field goal if he didn't hit him right in the face, right at halftime.
Yeah, man. Like if you're an elite wide receiver, you make those catches, you take over those games. Like, yeah, I'm with you. He's not an elite wide receiver. I don't know that Debo is either. He can be an elite playmaker, but I don't think he's been an elite playmaker in a couple of years. If he could do that, that'd be great.
I think
because he has that gear and Ayuk doesn't, to your point.
Correct. And I think part of the team, remember the guys, the team was centered around their playmakers and some Joe Schmo throwing the ball. And now we're going to pretend like, the Brock is the issue when the other components aren't living up to their bargain as well. I think it's a systemic thing that needs to get fixed. From the defense to the offense. Optimism, I will say that there's a lot of good teams right now where their quarterback is leading the league or is up there. Philadelphia. Hurts has more interceptions than Brock Purdy. I live in Western New York, Bills country. Josh Allen has more interceptions than Brock Purdy. So I think at the end of the day, I think everyone just needs to realize is that he's learned when to do it and when not to.
But like, let's just be honest. Like he's like a stock Purdy that went from penny stock to, I don't know. I don't do
He's
this kind of
Bitcoin.
stuff.
I'll go Bitcoin.
Yeah, he's
right?
Bitcoin, right? Like
He's
all of a sudden it just takes off and people are like, is this real? Is this real? And all of a sudden it goes, oh, and people are like, see. That's what I was counting on. And I think that's why people are so intrigued right now, because it blew up too fast. It's coming back down to earth fast. And it's like, is this going to stabilize and be like a consistent starting quarterback, or was it just a flash in the pan? I don't know.
So Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jimmy Garoppolo. Is it such a bad thing if he's in the middle?
Don't put him that close to Joe Montana. They were touching. Your hands were touching right there.
You know what I mean? Like if he comes right in the middle between there. Like
I don't even think he's Jeff Garcia right now. Jeff Garcia. One of the biggest comebacks in playoff history. What was he now? 20-something?
Against the Giants? Yes, it was. Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they should have beaten the Tampa Bay.
And people say like, oh, like Joe Montana struggled a little bit when he was younger. He didn't win so much. He was on a rebuilding team. Let's be honest. Brock Purdy is not on a rebuilding team whatsoever.
No.
It's a team that made Jimmy Garoppolo look good.
Right, and he's out of the league essentially. He's not going to start a game collecting checks, but essentially. But I do think the other thing that you can see, Grant, the reason for optimism is that I think Brock is probably mentally the toughest quarterback that Kyle has had in a while. And I say this because Kyle broke Jimmy. Jimmy was not ever himself after that injury. And everyone
is Kyle breaking Brock right now? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's the
why
thing.
Why is this a losing streak? How much longer is this going to go? Why is Brock committing more turnovers every game? Like, is Kyle breaking him? Because Kyle's not nice to people after losses. He's not the kind of guy who goes up to Brock at his locker, puts his arm around him, and is like, "Hey, buddy, we'll get him."
No, but he did mention how. When have you ever heard Kyle say, that question that you asked him? That was as close as him defending a quarterback that I've ever seen him do. He hasn't done that. He never did that for Jimmy.
The way I interpreted that was that Kyle was not expecting that question, didn't want that question to be asked, and was angry at me for asking it. Not prepared. I don't think he thought through his answer at all. I think he sort of was kind of caught flat-footed. So, I mean, if he was prepared for it, he could have said something a whole lot more elegant defending his quarterback, other than there's no reason to. Yeah, there is. I could give you 6 reasons in the last 3 games why you could think about it. So anyway, that's the way I interpreted it. Matt McEwen says, I'm optimistic because Grant will call them out. Thanks. Elite Archer 23 says, harsh world? You've been coddled your whole life. What do you know about a harsh world? Damn, that's so true.
Me or you? Well, we can go both. We can do both.
That's true. I've heard, sources told me that it's a harsh world. Dave Barclay says, Elite Archer, what do you know about harsh? Damn. Dave Barclay says, keep it up, Grant. What up, Karan? Matt McEwen says, BA is better wide receiver, Debo better weapon.
Yeah. I think that's a good. Yes, that's a good.
Yeah, the better route runner, better hands, although he can drop a pass too, and not as good after the catch. I guess preseason interceptions do matter, says Matt McEwen.
Again, I think it's a learning experience that Brock is doing in the fourth quarter. These interceptions are not occurring in typically the first, second, or third. He's seeing what defenses are doing to him, and it's also on Kyle to make his life easier. Some of those throws, like the last one in Minnesota that he threw up, what kind of route combination was that? I mean, There was no spread offense. It was a 2-man route. You're down by 5. You have no timeouts, and it goes to what you said prior. They don't practice this stuff. It's very apparent. They don't practice.
That's why I think it's hard to blame. Like, Brock is so prepared. He does what Kyle asks him. But if you're not asking him to prepare for the 2-minute drill, the hurry up offense, why would he be good at that in the NFL with no experience? Why? So that's why it's like, is Brock a choker? Maybe, man. It's possible. We'll find out in the next few years. Or is it possible that the entire offense from Kyle down is completely unprepared for being down in the fourth quarter because they don't practice those situations? How can you be good at something you don't practice?
I'm a Kyle Shanahan apologist, but one thing I will share, have you ever seen a coach use less of his playmakers when it mattered the most than Kyle Shanahan?
That's true.
Like when it really mattered. Like Sean McVay kind of has that used Carsman vibe to me, but he will get the ball to Cooper Kupp no matter what.
Yeah.
And it won him a Super Bowl. He will find you.
Yeah. I'm gonna live and die with you, not as opposed to Kyle, who's like, "Oh, Debo's having a good game." They expect me to do that, so I'm not. Because what would a genius do? 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 Fish and Chips says Kyle Shanahan chips away at quarterback confidence because he's QB1. I do think he chips away at quarterback confidence. I think he's the kind of guy who's constantly second guessing you and making you feel like you can't trust your instincts and your decisions. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is Brock's opportunity to show us that he can stand up to Kyle, because I don't know that Jimmy could. Jimmy might have just,
Jimmy
shut down.
Jimmy shut down. He shut down. And it showed, because what was our biggest complaint about Jimmy Garoppolo? He never took chances. And when he did, they're at the worst time, right? He never practiced.
Especially after he missed that throw in the Super Bowl, he became such a timid quarterback.
He became such a timid quarterback.
Yeah. Matt McEwen says, only happening when it matters most. PFF ranked 30th QB in the fourth. That's when it matters most. Fourth quarter. That's what really alarms me about Brock. He doesn't have to worry about the fourth quarter. He's like a guy on the Warriors back in their heyday. Like, they don't even play in the fourth quarter. The game's over in the third. But if it is a game in the fourth, what are you going to do? And so far, the returns are horrifying, alarming, but it's a small sample size. And he has another game ahead of him, because they don't have Trey Lance behind him. No one wants to see Sam Darnold play football.
No one wants to see Sam Darnold. No one.
It doesn't even seem like Kyle does.
No, Sam Darnold makes an appearance this year for an extended amount of time, we are going to be the most talented 7 seed that's ever walked and got ousted in the playoffs. I will tell you that right now. Kids Super Bowl goodbye. They've got 5 wins. Maybe they can be 500 for the rest of the year, but they're not doing anything with Sam Darnold. We've seen enough. Sam doesn't manipulate defenses. Sam doesn't move the pocket. Sam's got great arm talent, but Sam's also a turnover machine.
Turnover machine. Karan, this has been a great show. I think you did. You're like a vet. You're like the Brock Purdy. Just stepping right in, man. Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks everyone for watching. Yes, absolutely. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll do a Cohn phone in the morning. Karan, I don't think he's going to be there, because he's in the Hall of Fame. So
thank you again for the opportunity.